Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over an article by the New Hampshire Journal which discusses an interview with former governor of the state Chris Sununu on his possible 2026 Senate run. Former Governor Sununu told an interviewer on Thursday that while he's still trying to decide if he should run for Senate in 2026, if he does get in the race, quote, it's over. When it comes to running for the US Senate, Sununu told radio host Guy Benson, "I've always said my biggest fear is that I would win. I'm not too worried about that, actually. I would win, by the way." When Benson followed up, Sununu doubled down, saying, quote, "I know my voters. I'm connected to the voters," Sununu said. "I'm not taking it for granted. You'd have to run hard, but I know how to run. I know how to win. I just know my voters, and they know me. And so if I really wanted to do this, I have no doubt we'd be very, very successful. I know that sounds arrogant and all that kind of crap. I don't care. I'm just saying these are the ABCs of me winning." After serving 4 terms, Sununu left office in January as one of the most popular governors in the country. He flirted with a U.S. Senate run against Senator Maggie Hassan in 2022, and he briefly flirted with a 2024 White House bid 4 years. Sununu has said he has no interest in serving as one of the 100 in the Senate, saying his skills were as an executive, not a legislator. But that may be changing. On the eve of Shaheen's announcement, Sununu gave an interview in which he said Republicans have been asking him to run for Senate, and he was, quote, considering it. He told Benson the prospects of serving in the Senate look different now, in part thanks to Trump's DOGE initiative. He said, "Back in 2022, I had Republicans in the U.S. Senate telling me that balancing budgets didn't matter. America didn't care, and it wasn't important. And I basically said, screw you, I'm a budget hawk. I'm not going to become a part of a group that doesn't stand for efficiency and good government values and having the moral courage to make tough decisions." Clearly, that has changed. We have DOGE going on, thank you, President Trump. He's talking about balancing budgets, he's driving that message, and there's a need for leadership on something that I believe very, very strongly. There's a different attitude now, they're taking their job seriously. Shaheen mocks Sununu for his support of the DOGE effort. "He's talking about how he wants to be part of the Trump-Musk DOGE effort," said Semaphore when asked about Sununu getting into the race. "That doesn't play very well in New Hampshire, and I think it's going to play less well the longer we go into their efforts. So that's the position that he's taking. I think that's not going to be a very popular position." Ambassador and former Senator Scott Brown is also considering entering the race. Brown served as President Donald Trump's ambassador to New Zealand, but he also was very vocal in his criticism of Trump's behavior on January 6th. Sununu has been an aggressive Trump critic, particularly during the First in the Nation presidential primary last year when he endorsed former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Would Trump try and punish him if he ran for the U.S. Senate? Not at all, Sununu said. "I was at the White House 3 weeks ago," he told Benson. "The relationship is not of concern. There's a great understanding. I've been very supportive of what he's been doing with DOGE." As for his criticisms of Trump last year, Sununu chalked it up to politics. Everyone ran tough in the primary. I mean, come on," Sununu said. "And as soon as he won, we said, okay, look, this is where we've got to go. He's got the right message. Everyone has seen me out in the media for the last year working hard for the Republican Party, working hard to get folks to vote the right way. That is the least of my concerns, to be honest." David Bergstein, a communications director for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, told The Hill he isn't worried. "No Republican has won a Senate race in over a decade in New Hampshire, and that trend will continue in 2026. This is the exact kind of state where the building midterm backlash against Republicans will hit their candidates especially hard." The article is written by Michael Graham, who's the managing editor of InsideSources.com. This is a very, very fascinating situation as we examine the 2026 New Hampshire Senate race. It cannot be overstated enough that Chris Sununu is the most popular and most impressive Republican winning in New Hampshire in the 2000s, without a doubt. Sununu has won in 2016, 2018, 2020, and 2022 as governor of the state of New Hampshire, as New Hampshire elects its governors every 2 years, not every 4. He is without a doubt the top Republican in the state when it comes to, okay, who are the potential candidates that could run for this race? Who's the Republican that could win? Sununu is immediately and always at the top of that list. And I think this race really boils down to, does Chris Sununu actually run for the race? Because I think the article mentioned where Sununu stands in the Republican Party and his relationship with Donald Trump. I'm not going to touch on that too much because I feel like the article already did a good job saying that. The question is, Does Chris Sununu run for the Senate race? Because without Jeanne Shaheen running, the Democrats are likely going to put up one of Chris Pappas or Maggie Goodlander for the seat. That's who I think right now are the likeliest Democratic nominees for the Senate. So the Democrats are going to have a formidable candidate either way. Both Pappas and Goodlander just got elected, or they got elected. Pappas has been serving longer. Goodlander got elected last year, but they've both been elected in their congressional districts. Sununu has been elected statewide, and he's been elected statewide multiple times. Sununu comes from the obviously Sununu family in New Hampshire, which goes back just as far, if not farther, than the Shaheen family in New Hampshire. So you have two of the biggest political dynasties in state politics, both potentially, well, one no longer going to be running for senator, one could be becoming the senator of New Hampshire. Just to give you an idea of how Chris Sununu performed as running for governor, in 2016, Sununu got elected for the first time. Let me pull up 2016 here. Sununu won by 2.3% in a lean Republican margin, winning the election and getting elected for his first term. At the same time, Donald Trump narrowly lost the state of New Hampshire to Hillary Clinton. Chris Sununu was able to win by about 2.3%. In 2018, Sununu won re-election, winning the state by 7 points. And you may remember 2018 was the first midterm election of Donald Trump. It was a very good night for the Democrats. The Democrats did very well in the House and Senate. Sununu was able to win re-election by 7 points. 2020, obviously presidential wave year. I believe Joe Biden won the state of New Hampshire by around 8 points in 2020. Chris Sununu won re-election by 31.8%. 31 points. Absolutely insane, crazy blowout win for Sununu. In 2022, Sununu once again won by a safe Republican margin, though it certainly did come back down to earth a little bit, winning by 15.5% in a midterm election that was supposed to be very good for the Republicans, but a lot of factors, including the overturning of Roe v. Wade, turned it more into like a pretty decent night for both Republicans and Democrats overall. So that's Sununu's recent election history as governor. He consistently gets elected in New Hampshire. I don't think he's going to get elected as senator in a safe Republican way or anything like that, but the track record speaks for itself. Chris Sununu is the best performing Republican in the state of New Hampshire, and I know there's going to be Republicans, even in New Hampshire, that will not be satisfied with having Chris Sununu. They want someone that's more MAGA, someone that's more loyal to President Trump. And I can understand that argument, but the simple fact is Chris Sununu presents a very good chance for the Republicans to win the Senate race in 2026 if he does run. A more MAGA Republican, simply put, will not win that Senate race. And we can look at some pretty clear examples of this. I'm not just making this up. 2024, very close race in New Hampshire. Kamala Harris won 51% to 48%. If you want to get the exact numbers, actually, let me pull that up right now. New Hampshire went for Kamala Harris by 2.8%. 2.8%. Let's look at 2020. Donald Trump lost the state to Joe Biden by 7.4%. 2016, Donald Trump lost the state to Hillary Clinton by 0.37%. So 2 out of the last 3 presidential races in New Hampshire have been very close, but the Democrat has won all 3. In fact, if you want to go back to the last time a Republican won New Hampshire, you have to go all the way back to the year 2000, where George W. Bush won the state by 1.3%. It didn't even vote for Bush in 2004 when John Kerry won it by 1.4%. So we're coming up on a very long time since it's been won at the presidential level, and yet at the governor level, Chris Sununu has continued to win this race when he was the governor of the state. So without a doubt, Chris Sununu is the strongest Republican to run for this race. The question is ultimately, does Chris Sununu run? And it's really tough to gauge because he is putting out statements saying he's interested, but he also, in the same statements, essentially says that he probably doesn't want to. And it's going to come down to the wire, I think, does Sununu actually run? If Sununu doesn't run, I don't think the Republicans have no chances of winning the New Hampshire Senate race. I think Scott Brown is a very formidable candidate that could win a very, very close race, but I think Sununu gives the Republicans a much better chance at winning. So just to give you some idea of where I stand right now the Republicans in the Senate have about 51 seats in the 2026 map. Democrats start out with about 44, and I see about 5 Senate races, including New Hampshire, that I think are really competitive, or you could consider toss-ups. Right now, the New Hampshire Senate race, without Chris Sununu running, so let's say it's Chris Pappas versus Scott Brown, I think that race starts out as lean Democrat, which means I think it'll be more than a 1-point win for the Democrats, but not more than a 5-point win. I think it'll be a close race. I think it'll be hard fought, and I think there'll be a lot of money poured into the race. But I do think Chris Pappas would win a very, very close race against Scott Brown. If the race is Chris Sununu versus Chris Pappas, well, one thing for sure, we know Chris is going to win that race, but I'm very confident in the fact that I think Chris Sununu would win this race. Flipping the seat red, I think it would be a lean Republican win, though, as well, because governors typically get reelected in bigger numbers than Senate races. Senate races are more nationally driven. The more national politics get brought into it. So Sununu's very high approval numbers may go down a little bit if he does run for Senate, because for some reason Senate races just become a lot more polarized than a governor's race. So I don't think Sununu would win by like a likely margin, but I think he would win in a lean Republican margin, which would give the Republicans the first flip of the 2026 Senate elections. But that being said, until Sununu announces his intentions on New Hampshire, similar to North Carolina and Georgia, on the side of caution, I would say the Democrats are still favored to hold the Senate seat, but if Sununu runs, that could drastically change the Republicans' chances in New Hampshire. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like. Make sure to click subscribe. Leave a comment below asking any questions or comments you may have about this race. Do you think Sununu is going to run? Do you think it's a good decision for him to? Or do you think he's not going to? I'm very interested to hear what you have to say. That'll do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.